It doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It arrives quietly, testing the edges of your tolerance like water seeking cracks in stone. A comment that lands just wrong. A boundary crossed so subtly you question whether it was even crossed at all. A moment where you feel something shift, a slight diminishment, a small erosion of your standing, but you say nothing. You smile. You let it pass. And in that moment of silence, you've signed a contract you didn't know existed. A contract that says my dignity is negotiable. My boundaries are suggestions. My respect is optional. This isn't a video about standing up for yourself. This is a surgical examination of why you don't. Why intelligent, capable people allow themselves to be diminished repeatedly. Why the cost of keeping peace with others is war with yourself. Niccolo Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people spend their entire lives refusing to see. The world doesn't reward goodness. It rewards strength. And the moment you're perceived as someone who won't defend their territory, that territory gets invaded. By the end of this presentation, you'll understand the psychological mechanics of how disrespect takes root, why your current responses amplify rather than eliminate it, and the precise framework for becoming someone whose boundaries are respected automatically, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. This is going to be uncomfortable, because the enemy isn't just out there. It's in your conditioning, your fear, and the part of you that would rather be liked than respected. We're going to kill that part. Every human interaction contains an invisible negotiation about status and territory. Most people never consciously recognize this negotiation is happening, which is exactly why they lose it. When someone new enters your life, a colleague, a romantic interest, a friend of a friend, there's an unconscious process occurring beneath the surface conversation. They're testing the boundaries of what they can do in your presence without consequence. This isn't malicious. It's mechanical. Human beings are social animals hardwired to establish hierarchies because hierarchies determine resource allocation, attention, and survival priorities. We're constantly calibrating. Who do I need to respect? Who can I dominate? Who is above me? Who is below me? The tests start small because small tests are safe. They're deniable. They can be passed off as accidents, jokes, or misunderstandings if you push back. They arrive 10 minutes late without calling. They interrupt your story to tell theirs. They make a joke at your expense and watch your reaction. They forget something they promised you. They question your judgment in front of others. Each of these is a probe. They're pushing on the fence line of your territory to see if it holds or bends. Here's what most people don't understand. Your response to the first small test determines whether there will be larger tests. If you smile nervously and say it's okay when they arrive late without apology, you've just taught them that your time has no value. If you laugh uncomfortably when they joke at your expense, you've taught them that your dignity is a recreational resource they can use for entertainment. Machiavelli observed that men are driven by two principal forces, love and fear. In modern context, this translates to people respect those they value, love, or those they fear disappointing or losing, fear. When you tolerate disrespect without consequence, you eliminate both motivations. They don't fear losing you because you've demonstrated you'll stay regardless of how they treat you. And they don't value you because value requires scarcity, the perception that access to you is conditional, not guaranteed. Every human interaction contains an invisible negotiation about status and territory. Most people never consciously recognize this negotiation is happening, which is exactly why they lose it. When someone new enters your life, a colleague, a romantic interest, a friend of a friend, there's an unconscious process occurring beneath the surface conversation. They're testing the boundaries of what they can do in your presence without consequence. This isn't malicious, it's mechanical. Human beings are social animals hardwired to establish hierarchies because hierarchies determine resource allocation, attention, and survival priorities. We're constantly calibrating. Who do I need to respect? Who can I dominate? Who is above me? Who is below me? The tests start small because small tests are safe. They're deniable. They can be passed off as accidents, jokes, or misunderstandings if you push back. They arrive 10 minutes late without calling. They interrupt your story to tell theirs. They make a joke at your expense and watch your reaction. They forget something they promised you. They question your judgment in front of others. Each of these is a probe. They're pushing on the fence line of your territory to see if it holds or bends. Here's what most people don't understand. Your response to the first small test determines whether there will be larger tests. If you smile nervously and say it's okay, when they arrive late without apology, you've just taught them that your time has no value. If you laugh uncomfortably when they joke at your expense, you've taught them that your dignity is a recreational resource they can use for entertainment. Machiavelli observed that men are driven by two principal forces, love and fear. In modern context, this translates to people respect those they value, love, or those they fear disappointing or losing, fear. When you tolerate disrespect without consequence, you eliminate both motivations. They don't fear losing you because you've demonstrated you'll stay regardless of how they treat you. And they don't value you because value requires scarcity, the perception that access to you is conditional, not guaranteed. Let me show you how this escalates in real relationships. Sorry, I'm late. Traffic was crazy. No traffic. They just didn't prioritize you. Your response? No worries, I was just reading. Translation, your time is flexible. You're not a priority. They cancel plans at the last minute. They don't respond to messages for days. They make decisions that affect you without consulting you. Your response? You express mild frustration, but ultimately accept their explanation. Translation, complaints don't lead to consequences. Your boundaries are suggestions. This is now the normal operating procedure. They treat you as a low-priority option. Your feelings, time, and needs are consistently subordinated to theirs. And you've accepted this as the price of maintaining the relationship. This didn't happen because they're a terrible person. It happened because you taught them, through repeated tolerance, that this is the level of treatment you accept. Think about the last time you felt genuinely disrespected, not annoyed, truly diminished. What happened right before that moment that you let slide? What smaller violation did you tolerate that taught them the larger one would be acceptable? The brutal truth most people can't face is this: you are the architect of how people treat you. Not because you deserve disrespect, but because you've demonstrated what you'll tolerate. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But he practiced something most people miss. He maintained consequence-based boundaries that people learned not to cross. His kindness wasn't infinite tolerance. It was strategic grace extended to those who demonstrated respect. The moment someone discovers your boundaries are negotiable, they begin negotiations. And in negotiations, the person willing to walk away has all the leverage. If you're not willing to walk away from disrespectful treatment, you have no leverage. You have hope that they'll change, expectations that they should treat you better, and rationalization that if you just communicate more clearly, they'll understand. None of that is leverage. Here's what actually happens in the psyche of someone who crosses your boundary without consequence. First, relief. Oh, they didn't push back. That was easier than expected. Then, recalibration. Okay, so that level of treatment is acceptable. Let me see what else is acceptable. Then, habituation. This is just how we interact. This is normal. You wanted respect through understanding. What you created was disrespect through permission. The hierarchy test never stops. Every interaction is an opportunity for someone to confirm or challenge your position in their mental status assessment. If you consistently demonstrate that your boundaries are firm, people internalize that you're high status, someone whose territory requires respect. If you consistently demonstrate that your boundaries are flexible, people internalize that you're low status, someone whose territory can be encroached upon without cost. This isn't about being aggressive or difficult. It's about being consistent. The person who responds to the first small violation with calm, clear consequence enforcement never has to deal with the 10th large violation. Before we go deeper, I need you to do something uncomfortable. Review the last week of your interactions. How many times did you let something slide that violated your standards? How many times did you rationalize someone's disrespectful behavior? How many times did you prioritize keeping peace over keeping boundaries? Every one of those moments was you training someone that disrespecting you carries no cost. The question isn't whether you've been doing this. You have. The question is, are you ready to stop? Now that you understand how disrespect is established through your responses, we need to address what most people do wrong when they try to defend themselves. The standard advice is weak, and it makes things worse. Use I statements. Communicate your feelings clearly. Help them understand how their behavior affects you. This advice assumes you're dealing with someone operating in good faith who simply doesn't realize they're being disrespectful. That's rarely the case. Most disrespect is semi-conscious. The person knows what they're doing feels wrong, but they're doing it anyway because they've learned you won't stop them. When you explain your feelings to someone who disrespects you, you're not setting a boundary. You're providing intelligence. You're showing them exactly which behaviors produce which emotional reactions. You're giving them the user manual for controlling you. When you're late without calling, I feel unimportant. What they hear. If I want to make you feel unimportant, being late without calling is an efficient method. When you interrupt me, I feel like my perspective doesn't matter to you. What they hear. Interruption is a tool I can use to assert dominance when needed. You thought you were building understanding. You were building a control mechanism. So what do you do instead? You become the void. Let me explain what this means. When someone throws a ball at a wall, the ball bounces back. There's engagement, there's reaction. The thrower gets feedback, force, angle, trajectory. They can adjust and throw again. It's a loop. Now imagine throwing a ball into an abyss. No bounce, no sound, just silence. The ball disappears into darkness. Do you throw another ball? No. You become uncertain. You step back. You don't know what's in that darkness, and uncertainty creates caution. This is the power of strategic non-reaction. When someone disrespects you, they're expecting a script. Either you get angry, which proves they control your emotions and creates drama they can frame as you being difficult, or you retreat, which proves they've successfully dominated the interaction. Both responses give them what they want, confirmation that they affect you. When you give them neither, you break the script. Here's how this looks in practice. They make a subtle dig at you in front of others. Must be nice to leave work early. The wrong response. Actually, I finished all my work, or traffic was really bad today. You're defending. You've accepted the premise that you owe an explanation. The void response. You stop what you're doing. You turn. You look directly at them. Hold eye contact for 3 full seconds. Don't smile. Don't scowl. Simply observe. Then turn back to what you were doing without a word. What just happened? You heard them. They know you heard them because you stopped and looked. But you gave them nothing. No explanation, no defense, no emotion. Their comment disappeared into the void. Now they're sitting with the awkwardness they created. The insult is hanging in the air, and it's reflecting back on them. Silence is a mirror. In your silence, they hear the pettiness of their own comment. They see the immaturity of their behavior reflected back to them, and they will start to fidget. I was just joking. Why are you so serious? These are scrambles. They're trying to get the ball back, to re-establish the dynamic where they say something and you react. Don't give it to them. This technique works because it denies them the 2 things they were seeking, emotional reaction and status adjustment. You've refused to play the game they initiated, which means they lost it without you having to fight. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of the fox, the cunning needed to recognize traps. Disrespect disguised as casual conversation is a trap. The backhanded compliment is a trap. You're pretty smart for someone who didn't go to college. You look good. Have you lost weight? If you say thank you, you've accepted the insult buried in the compliment. If you get defensive, you've taken the bait and now you're explaining yourself. Both responses validate that their opinion of you matters enough to move you. The fox sees through to the intention. Someone trying to lower your status in a deniable way. The fox doesn't engage with the content of the trap. The fox simply steps around it. But here's what requires real discipline. You must develop what I call cold empathy. Hot empathy is feeling what they feel, getting swept up in the emotion, the drama, the interpersonal tension. Cold empathy is clinical observation. You understand why they're doing it without being infected by it. Why is this person trying to diminish me right now? usually because they feel their own status is threatened by you. Secure people don't need to belittle others to feel tall. Only people who feel small inside need to stand on someone else to feel elevated. When you see disrespect for what it actually is, a symptom of their internal insecurity, not a reflection of your actual worth, it loses its sting. It becomes almost pathetic. You stop thinking, "What's wrong with me?" and start thinking, "What's broken in them?" This shift in perspective is everything. It moves you from the victim position to the analyst position. You're no longer in the interaction, you're observing it. And from that position, you can respond strategically rather than emotionally. Now let me give you an advanced technique, strategic agreement. They say, "You're so lazy." You say, "Absolutely. It's a lifestyle choice." They say, "You're weird." You say, "I've been told." This is called fogging. You become like fog. If you throw a stone at a rock, it chips. If you throw a stone at fog, it passes right through. There's nothing solid to strike. By agreeing with what they meant as an insult, or rather by refusing to accept it as an insult, you completely disarm them. You've taken their weapon out of their hand and dropped it on the floor. It confuses them, it breaks their frame. They wanted a fight. You gave them nothing to fight against. But, and this is critical, this only works if you're genuinely unbothered. If you're saying absolutely through gritted teeth while seething inside, they'll see through it. The void technique requires actual emotional detachment from their opinion of you. This is why internal work is necessary. You can't fake not caring what they think. You have to actually not care. And you achieve that by building your self-respect from internal standards rather than external validation. Which brings us to the next level, when silence and deflection aren't enough. The void technique handles everyday disrespect, the probes, the tests, the casual boundary violations, but there are moments when silence is insufficient. When someone repeatedly crosses lines after you've demonstrated their lines, when withdrawal of engagement doesn't produce recalibration. These moments require the lion, not just the fox. Machiavelli wrote, "Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved." In modern context, this doesn't mean being cruel. It means ensuring that disrespecting you carries a real cost. The cost is loss of access to you. Here's where most people fail catastrophically. They threaten consequences but don't enforce them. "If you do that again, I'll leave." But then it happens again, and they don't leave. They've just taught the other person that their boundaries are empty threats. Machiavelli was clear. Men ought either to be well treated or crushed. In modern application, people either earn your full presence through respectful treatment, or they lose access to you entirely. There is no middle ground of tolerating disrespect while maintaining the relationship. Let me show you what consequence architecture looks like. Someone is consistently late to meetups with you without apology or regard for your time. The wrong response is sending a paragraph about how their lateness makes you feel undervalued. That's explaining. That's seeking understanding and behavior change through emotional appeal. The right response: stop inviting them. When they eventually reach out wondering why you haven't made plans, you're genuinely busy with other things. Not fake busy, actually busy building a life with people who respect your time. And if they explicitly ask, you can say calmly, "I've noticed our schedules don't align well. I'm spending time with people whose priorities better match mine." No accusation, no emotional plea, just a factual statement and a consequence. They lost access to the benefit of your company because they demonstrated through repeated behavior that they don't value it. This is painful because it requires you to be willing to lose relationships, and that's why most people stay stuck. They're not willing to walk away. They're holding on to scraps because they're terrified of the void. But understand this clearly. If you're not willing to walk away from disrespectful treatment, you have zero leverage. None. Your boundaries become requests that the other person can grant or deny based on their convenience. A friend repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute. Stop making plans. When they ask why you've been distant, you can say, "I've found I'm more fulfilled spending time with people I can count on." Then change the subject or end the conversation. A romantic partner dismisses your feelings when you express them. Stop expressing them to that person. Become surface-level pleasant but emotionally distant. When they notice and ask what's wrong, you can say, "I'm reconsidering how I share my inner world." Then demonstrate through your behavior that emotional intimacy is a privilege they're losing access to. A coworker takes credit for your work, stop collaborating with them. When projects arise, you're suddenly swamped with individual work. When they push, you can say, "I found I'm more productive on independent projects." Notice the pattern. You don't explain the behavioral connection. You don't say, "You did X, so I'm doing Y." That's still seeking validation and behavior change. Instead, you simply adjust your behavior based on their demonstrated character, and if they ask, you state your new preference without linking it to their past behavior. Why? Because linking it gives them an opportunity to negotiate, promise to change, explain why it wasn't their fault. You've opened a dialogue where your boundary becomes something they can talk you out of. When you simply state your new reality without justification, you've closed that door. This is your decision. It's not up for debate. This requires you to develop outcome independence. You must be genuinely okay with losing this person from your life. Not okay as in it won't hurt, it will. But okay as in I will survive and even thrive without them. The person who says I'll leave if this continues while desperately hoping they won't have to is making an empty threat. The person who says nothing but quietly rebuilds their life without that person is enforcing a boundary. Scarcity creates value. When you're always available, always forgiving, always giving one more chance, your value drops. You become infrastructure, expected, assumed, taken for granted. When you withdraw, when you demonstrate that access to you is conditional and can be revoked, your value immediately increases. This isn't manipulation. This is natural consequence. People who treat you poorly should experience the natural consequence of that treatment, less access to the benefits you provide. Here's what happens when you implement consequence architecture correctly. First, confusion. They don't understand why you've pulled back because you haven't explained it. They might ask if everything's okay. Don't rush to reassure, let them sit in uncertainty. Second, testing. They might escalate the behavior that caused you to withdraw, seeing if they can provoke you into explaining yourself. Hold your ground. Maintain your new boundaries without justifying them. Third, either adjustment or departure. One of two things happens. They recalibrate their behavior to earn back access to you, in which case you can slowly reinvest if the new behavior holds, or they leave, in which case you've successfully filtered out someone who didn't respect you. Both outcomes are victories. Either the relationship improves to acceptable standards, or you've freed yourself from a relationship that was costing more than it was providing. The key principle: your boundaries are not requests for approval. They are statements of what you will and won't accept. If someone can't meet those standards, they don't get access to you. No anger, no drama, no punishment, just natural consequence. Marcus Aurelius commanded armies and ruled an empire, but he maintained fierce boundaries about his time and energy. He wrote, "Learn to ask of all actions, why are they doing that? But most importantly, learn to ask yourself, why am I accepting that?" The answer to that second question is usually fear. Fear of being alone, fear of conflict, fear of being seen as difficult. But those fears only have power if you've given your worth over to external validation. Which brings us to the internal work. We've covered the mechanics of how disrespect enters your life, why your current responses amplify it, and the specific techniques for eliminating it. But there's one level beyond all of this that we need to address. The ultimate goal is not just to handle disrespect, it's to transcend it entirely. There's a level of self-mastery where other people's opinions genuinely don't penetrate, not because you're suppressing hurt, but because you've developed such strong internal validation that external judgments have no weight. This is the state of the outlier, the person who has built their identity on internal standards rather than external feedback, the person who knows who they are, independent of who others think they are. When you reach this level, you can look at someone attempting to disrespect you and feel nothing but curiosity. How fascinating, you think. Look at how much pain they're carrying that they need to try to transfer it to me. You're no longer on the chessboard. You're watching the game. You understand that people project their reality onto others. When someone calls you arrogant, it's because they feel small. When someone calls you selfish, it's because they want to use you. When someone calls you cold, it's because you've stopped providing the warmth they were exploiting. You're not taking it personally anymore. You're taking it structurally. You see human beings as sophisticated machines running outdated software, trauma patterns, fear responses, defensive mechanisms. They're not attacking you specifically. You're just a convenient screen for them to project their internal movie onto. This is what Machiavelli aspired to when he wrote about being unmoved by fortune, not ruled by circumstances, but by your own virtue, your own capability and judgment. You become the eye of the storm. Chaos can swirl around you, but you remain still. And in that stillness you find a power that no insult, no rejection, no betrayal can ever touch. This is the victory. Not that they stop trying to disrespect you. They might never stop. The world is full of wounded people looking for someone to wound. The victory is that you stop caring. You stop needing them to be different. You stop waiting for an apology that will never come. You accept reality exactly as it is and move through it with the precision of a predator and the wisdom of a sage. You become both the lion and the fox. Your mission is clear. Observe this week with new eyes. See the tests. Notice when you fail them. Pick one boundary to hold. Watch what happens when you stop bending. The path to sovereignty is steep. Most people die at base camp complaining about the weather. You're climbing. The air is thinner up here. It's colder. But the view is clarity. You see who people really are, and more importantly, you see who you really are. You're not the victim of your story. You're the author. And the author has the power to write a new character, a character who commands respect not by demanding it, but by embodying it. The world will adjust to you. It always does. The strong determine the atmosphere. The weak adapt to it. Be the weather. If this exposed something in you, write in the comments, I am the boundary. Share this with someone who keeps tolerating disrespect and wondering why it keeps happening. Subscribe if you're done being walked over. The transformation begins the moment you realize your tolerance isn't virtue, it's self-abandonment.